Artificial intelligence has captured our attention and imaginations, that's for sure. We're constantly asked how AI will change what we do on projects. Well, our next presenter, Chuck Pettinger, is going to discuss that aspect of that. Chuck, can you turn on your or start sharing your screen for us?
All right.
And Chuck is going to talk about leveraging AI for language analytics and daily planning conversations. Very interesting. And Chuck is a safety science officer for Factor Lab, a company that deploys services to improve safety defenses in high-risk workplaces. He has consulted with a wide variety of industries. I mean, it's a long list: Bayer, Bechtel, BD Biosciences, Caterpillar, Chevron, Coca-Cola, Cummins, ExxonMobil. It goes on and on and on. Chuck has his doctorate in psychology from Virginia Tech University, and I'm really interested to hear from you today. So I'll turn it over to you and then be back for Q&A.
Good. Awesome. Awesome. Well, all right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And, you can't go a day without hearing some conversation, read an article about AI, natural language processing, large language models like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. All these things are in and around us all the time. And you're going to hear a little bit more today about that because I'm going to specifically talk about leveraging AI using specifically language analytics to help improve the things that we do every day, daily planning conversations, to enhance project success. Now, we've been in this space for 20 some years. We first started out as DBO2. We introduced the world's first PDA to collect safety audits with. I don't know if anyone remembers what PDAs are. That's maybe dating you a little bit, but then at Predictive Solutions, our second company, we developed the world's first predictive model. We could predict which projects were more likely to have an injury. That was a dozen years ago. And currently, our current organization is Factor Lab. So in today's talk, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how AI allows us to accelerate change. Technology, artificial intelligence are never the game changers. What they do is they help facilitate that change. And really what we focus on is that AI allows us to look at problems through a different lens. And by doing that, we can imagine different solutions that we never knew existed before, right? But the problem in our space is typically people continue to look at the same problems through the same lenses. And so what do? They apply the same solutions, which is bringing us back around in a circle. So in today's talk, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how we got to where we're at. And we're going to talk how AI is currently improving the daily planning activity for construction companies that we're working with. I'll give you a quick little case study on how it has improved pre-test planning and some of the results of that. And we'll leave some time for conversations. So like I said, our company is Factor Lab, and I'm not going to go into a long description of what we do, but suffice it to say that we are a laboratory, right? We help our customers look at different solutions to problems that are plaguing them, right? We look at different things that can help them become more effective, more efficient, improve their continuous improvement processes and operations. We do that through data science, different applications and technology. Now, over the years, we worked with many different amazing companies and amazing people. One company we did a lot of work with was Structure Tone, more specifically Dan Sadler. And several years ago, Dan came to us and said, Chuck, all right, these pre-job briefs, these pre-job conversations my guys are having are a waste of time. I don't believe they're doing anything. I'm paying these guys for a half hour of doing nothing. Like John said, just standing around, kicking rocks. So what can we do to improve that? So we did some brainstorming, and Dan's like, well, you developed applications, make me an app. And we're like, oh, we've been down that road. Apps don't change behavior, right? Just because I have a Fitbit does not mean I'm going to lose weight, right? So Just because you have an app to track something, it doesn't mean that it's actually going to improve. You have to do something with it. But he's like, well, I have no idea how they're doing them right now. So I need at least a baseline. So we're like, okay, well, we developed an app, and it was based on the current things that we typically do, right? It's more like a social media app than anything. But what we found out is that people started recording their conversations, and we learned some really interesting things. So the question we first asked Dan was, what's going to happen when 40% of your construction leaders have better daily planning conversations, right? That was the research question we went into this with. And I'll tell you what happens is you win awards. Back in 2019, Dan won the Gary Bird Horizon Award. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with ERMI or not, but they do some really interesting stuff. And he credits kind of this evolution in the conversations through kind of what we did back in the day. And he saw a great reduction in incident rate, even though there was a 30% increase in man hours worked. So again, conversations are the key, right? It's not the technology, it's not the app, it's creating the environment for people to have those, like John said, psychologically safe conversations. Because without them, people may be doing the work and they're not quite sure what we're supposed to do. So in terms of understanding real-time insights into how real work actually is being planned and executed, this gives us direct access to that. And we've done a lot of work with Philip Albanese. He's over there at JJ Albanese, and this is a great quote by him, right? He feels this is really essential to moving his organization forward. So by listening to conversations and viewing the analytics, we can identify hidden leaders, the next generation of leaders who lift up the entire workforce. So we're going to spend some time talking about these conversation analytics, because what this allows planners to do is move beyond having stacks of paper, having Excel spreadsheets, and this gives them insight into understanding and optimizing the work execution at the front line. So a little bit of background first. Like I said, we developed an app that helps collect all the minutia of the paperwork. We made it easier for people to do that. But one interesting thing that happened is, quite on accident, the crews started recording their conversations like it was TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. And we started really understanding what these were like. So let me give you an example of a video. The sound may not be loud, but you'll still get the idea. And tell me if this is familiar to anybody.
System label. This label will now be found on chemicals and products that the company purchases. This should be the only label you see after December 1st, 2015. The elements that you will find required on all labels include pictograms, product identifier, single word.
Oh my goodness, I can't even watch all of that, right? I mean, does anyone look like they're paying attention at all, right? Is this a good use of their time? John said people standing around. Yes, people stand around. Every day around the world, they have these morning conversations, huddles up, that are supposed to do something. But nobody really looks at this. And we found out through these videos and conversations that this process is broken, right? The paper process is broken. Does anyone even look at the piece of paper that they sign? Does it ever get looked at by the project team, right? It's just there just in case, right? Just in case something happened, right? So is this really serving any purpose? Maybe somebody's listening to that. But can you imagine if you had to suffer through, well, maybe some of you had to suffer through meetings like this, but this, in Dan's perspective, is costing him hundreds of thousands of dollars every month, because people are wasting a half hour times 20 people per conversation, or however many are there, every day around their projects around the world, right? So what do? Well, we capture that conversation, and we transcribe and translate it. And then our analytics can go in and read and understand what they're talking about. Let me give you another little bit of a hint on what a better one sounds like.
Friday, February 9th. Today's RM. We're going to be installing conduit, pulling wire, and checking VRHs. Luis, what are you working on, and what are some hazards for you?
Well, yesterday I was connecting some boxes. Some hazard would be the finished product. So maybe an example for like the ceiling
Okay.
grade.
Okay. How can you look out for the ceiling grade, or why do you need to look out for it?
When I was carrying the ladder yesterday, it was a little bit too heavy for me. So I kind of put it down and asked for help. But at the same time I was trying to do it on my own, I hit the ceiling grade, so you need to be careful.
All right, good. Angel?
Pulling wire.
Okay.
Algunos hazards son strains and sprains.
Okay.
Tenemos que estirarnos bien en las mañanas y usar mechanical means si los necesitamos.
Okay, good. Anthony, what are you working
Okay, so I won't go through the whole thing, but you kind of get the idea. Even Angel was speaking in Spanish, so the technology can transcribe and translate the information so that we can actually capture this. Now, over the years of doing this, we have over 500,000 conversations. And, if you think about how many individual sentences are in each one of that's like 22 million individual sentences that they're talking about specific things that we can kind of take a look at. So what we did is we took this information to some of our friends up in the University of Buffalo, and we had data scientists quell through this, and they came up with 7 different characteristics of a high impact conversation. Now, there's a lot of data and research out there, and what can we do to turn a conversation into a high impact discussion, right? And some of the characteristics that we discovered through compiling all of this information is that there's engagement, right? There's leader engagement, meaning the leader is asking questions, not just reciting. And then the participants are also having discussions. And that back and forth is one of the critical things that differentiate low impact from high impact. If you're just being spoken to, like that first video we watched, you're not engaged at all, right? And then it gets to planning. Are they planning the work? Are they questioning? Are they asking, what's different today than yesterday? Our supplies didn't show up today. How are we going to make that happen? Our work, we're waiting on the HVAC guys to finish so we can get in there and finish our drywall, right? They're discussing the planning of the activity. And then again, John mentioned psychological safety, and that's something that we can actually measure through the conversations. We call it caring, right? But you can actually go in, and the foremen who are looking out for their workers, hey, is everyone doing good today? Yeah, it was a long weekend. Is everyone with us? Right? He's checking to make sure that his guys are plugged in for the day. And then they discuss hazards, real hazards, things that are going to impact what they're doing, and those high hazards, what they call sticky hazards. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that before, but, stuff that could kill you, right? So what are the things that are really going to make us have a bad day? So now what we can do with each one of those conversations that we just watched, we can score it. So each one of these 7 characteristics get a score from 1 to 5. And based on that, we can understand the impact of these conversations, right? This really gets at how work is being planned and executed and helps us understand the factors that impact the optimization of the work that's being executed, right? That can really give us insight. If these guys are still working on this part of the project and not getting that done, they don't have the right tools or equipment, they don't have the product, the ladder, like in the other example, is too large for this guy to carry by himself without causing property damage, right? There's a lot of things that we can focus on that are impacting how well our projects get executed. Here's another example. And a lot of people say, oh, Chuck, you're never going to get these people to record videos of themselves. Really, it's not that big a deal, right? Videoing people is something that everyone does these days. So once they get over this, oh, I'm being watched, they just have a conversation. And you can hear leadership in the conversation.
Hey guys, this is Gary Lechner Electric. Today we're going to be working on some overhead. We're going to be relocating some lights. We're going to be working on roofing as well, installing boxes, running MC cable, installing some pipes, running some flex. What are some hazards we're going to run into today? Sure.
Of course, with the MC, make sure you take care of yourself, of your hands with gloves. You can get cut. We're working with sharp edges, and the edge of the MC is sharp too, so be careful with that. And also we're working on ladders. Make sure you don't pass the second steps, and use the proper ladder.
So you kind of get an idea of what a better high impact conversation is about, right? Now, I know that I mentioned that each one of these conversations gets scored. They get scored on on 7 of those characteristics, right? So they can be scored from 1 to 5. So this is an example of a conversation that got a score of 8. Not very high. Right, I was not injured yesterday. I'm going to start my project tomorrow on shrink wrap, which I'll do the later part of the day. I'm also building a rack, right? If there was somebody there, it's not very impactful, right? He's just talking. So you can see that's about an 8. It's not great. Now this is a 15. This is what a 15 conversation might look like. Again, 15 out of 35. Good morning, this is Ben. We planned for a while. Good morning. Yeah, we got to do this. We got to do that. You can see that there's multiple speakers and they're talking specifically about what they need to do. Now, this is a score of a 31. So you can see there's multiple speakers. They're getting into a lot more detail on what they have to focus on. Now, what we found, and you might look at this and say, wow, this is a big, long conversation. This is only 2.5 minutes. Most of the conversations that they do on video are anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes on average. So what we found is that people are a lot more to the point. They're writing less. They can get this task done a lot more quickly, have more to the point conversations on what they need to focus on, and really identify the things that they need to look out for. So we have a whole lot of analytics. We are data geeks, right? I can get into some of the minutia of this information, but what we found is that the projects that have better conversation scores, right, tend to perform better. We found that the projects that have higher conversation scores hurt less people, right? There's higher customer satisfaction. I have some elevator guys that go around and repair elevators, and they focus on customer satisfaction. How can they make the customer more satisfied, right? I don't know if you've seen this, but in some car companies, when you take your car in to be serviced, they do a video of what they've done to your car. And it really makes the client know that their car is being taken care of. Similar in this situation. And also, if you look at it in terms of project management, what are your guys doing in the field? You can tune in and listen to how work is actually being planned and done. So what this line or what this graph represents is you can see that they're getting better over time. The score, conversation scores, goes from 0 to 30. That's the highest in this one. But what is of note, you can see that most of those lines are trending upwards. So without any intervention, right, this group of people for this project are improving their conversations. Now, for us overall, over the 500,000 conversations, 40% of them have improved over time. For this group, 100% of them have improved over time. And in the last 10 conversations, there's been a 68% improvement. So this is, again, when I mentioned this is a lens of which to look through different problems. There's a variety of things that we've seen, right? People doing work set up wrong. Maybe people are having a different way of doing it that is a game changer, that people want to share this information to other folks, right? There's a lot of information that we're gathering. So here's another way of looking at it. We develop models, and each one of these models are an individual, and we have over, I think now 100 different models that look at different things. This one is focusing on care, high hazard, observe engagement. This is the simple 7 that I brought up earlier, right? And you can see for the projects who's doing really well. And again, most of the times, the projects that are having better conversations are performing better. Now, this is a different set of models that we're looking at. This is looking at it in terms of capacity. Are the conversations talking about capacity? Do we have enough people to get the job done? We have too many people standing around, right? This is a way of identifying some other red flags that Stephanie talked about earlier. Are we talking about our expectations? Are we setting the scope of the job that we need to get done by the day? Are people talking about fatigue? I was just down in South Carolina working with some pipeline contractors, and they're working in 105 degree, 120 with humidity, and they talk about fatigue and hydration, right? And or are we talking about change? What is change from today to tomorrow? It's raining a lot. What is that going to do to our work for today? So this is just one of the things we can do. Now, I'll give you a quick case study, and then I'll turn it over to some questions. So this is an electrical contractor that we did some work with. They're profitable. They're profitable, safe company, great safety metrics. But in 2019, they had a fatality in a sister company. There was a lot of causations, and 31 days later, they had another incident. So they went in and they wanted to improve their pre-task plans. That's what PTP stands for. And they had, what was interesting is that they had operations own this. So it really wasn't a safety initiative, because operations felt that these pre-job conversations were things that were in their control, right? The superintendents want to make sure their guys are talking about things that matter to getting their job done and staying safe. So what do we find? Well, this scatter plot represents conversations. The orange and the purple, not so good, low impact. The green and the gold, a little bit higher. So this is the first 6 months of focusing on conversations. You can see in the second 6 months, more and more moving over to the right-hand side. Now, the turquoise on top are people who are just reciting. There's only one person talking. So we still have some problems doing that. And then the last 6 months, you can see the dramatic shift going from higher impact conversations. And as a result, they have better performance metrics in terms of, what they do. Now, the last part of what we do is make sure that people are getting recognition. And like Joseph Albanese talked about, we're identifying some people out in the field that are our future leaders, right? There are some foremen out there that are amazing with people. They're great at organization. They're great at checking in with their people. We can identify these and recognize them. So a lot of the leaders that we've worked with have taken the time to give out awards for the best conversations, right? People get together and celebrate how good they are, right? And this is, again, you want to get some of this momentum going. This is a way of doing it. So we'd like to hear from you, the changes that you are making. And again, we focus a lot on giving you a different lens as to which to look at these problems through. And we're real excited to partner with PPI because you guys think about things differently, right? And that's what we look for in partners. So I'd be happy to take any questions that we got.
Yeah, that was really thought-provoking. We got a great question here. It says, how does the AI figure out what type of a conversation the crews are having? Also, other tags like change, expectations, fatigue, question quality, etc. Or is this a manual operation?
Oh no, it's not manual. So with the thousands, hundreds of thousands of conversations that are coming in, nobody has time to look at each one of those conversations, right? So what the analytics do is when they transcribe it or translate it if it's in Spanish, the AI goes in and reads these conversations and knows that this one's about scaffolding. This one's about talking about scope. This one's talking about fatigue. And they categorize these into different buckets. We call them models. Then there's overarching meta models that bring them all together, like conversation scores. But basically, what we do with our organizations that we work with is we find out what are the problems that you're trying to solve and see if the conversations are bearing that information out. So yes, we don't expect everyone to go through and listen to all those conversations, but at scale, we can listen to hundreds of thousands of conversations and give you an idea which projects are performing well in terms of conversations and which aren't.
Interesting. So another question, are you able to generate the required OSHA forms directly from the videos? If so, I assume they still have to be signed by the individual workers at a minimum.
Yeah, so we've gotten this question, and yes, we have a form that you can go out and fill out, and it fills out all the required information. And what's interesting, OSHA does not require you to sign any pre-job brief, right? And if you ask the actual crews, hey, why are you guys signing this form? What do you think they say? CYA for the company, right? There's no reason, especially since the guys are on video, right? So from the company's perspective, if something goes wrong, they can go back and show dozens of videos where conversations were done amazing, right? And they can identify, yeah, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and preparing our guys to do the work safely and within scope. So yes, all the technology can take care of all that minutia of paperwork. And yeah, we still have companies that sign it virtually on the iPad, right? So we still have people that do that. Now, whether you could read it is another thing. Even on a piece of paper, you can't read half the signatures, right?
So I can easily envision, well, this is really interesting piece of work. I'm sure I don't know, many of our listeners are probably thinking, boy, how do I take this back and implement this in my safety program? Because I could see how to improve the quality of those pre-task conversations. Can be really boring or can be effective. And I can see an easy connection to adapting this technology into the daily production planning meetings.
Absolutely.
The quality of those meetings does vary as well. I'm curious, I think you addressed this, but I wasn't quite sure I understood from the slides. Did you see an improvement in the effectiveness of the individual supervisors or leaders over time because they were being recorded? Just the fact that they were being recorded, did that change the calculation?
Yeah, so a lot of people say that, they have that effect if you get observed or recorded, right? Your behavior improves. Well, it actually does improve up until they become comfortable, and then they go back into the flow. But what they are discovering is that, if people are actually paying attention to this, right, they're doing a little prep work. They're doing a pre-conversation saying, all right, hey, Gary, when we talk, you're going to talk about putting up scaffolding, right? All right, good. You got that, right? Stephanie, you're going to talk about some of the red flags, and John's going to make sure that we're all psychologically safe. So, right. And then they start the conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it really is an indicator of leadership in the field,
Sure.
right? Closest to the work.
Yeah.
And making sure that your guys understand what they're being asked to do also helps you with making sure that people are productive, on time, safe, and those kind of things.
So we got time for one more quick question. I think it's an interesting one. Have you applied this video conversation technique with project teams or project managers within a program, not safety specific? So not safety related. Have you tried this elsewhere?
Well, it's a conversation model, so it does pick up on a variety of things besides safety. I mean, in terms of safety, we focus on hazards and things like that, but most of the other things have to do with how well the conversation is being done, right? Pentland is a big advocate of this turn taking. And I think in project team meetings, we can gather a lot of insight from that. And then you have the project executives who are looking at all of their projects across a region saying, why are these guys always on schedule and these guys aren't?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And really how we have conversations about this can impact that.
All right, very good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to write the paper and make the presentation. I'm sure folks are going to be downloading that and giving it a close read. So thank you again. If you could stop sharing for me, we can move on to our next presenter.